What's up, guys? Got a surprise for y'all today. It's been a year coming, but it's finally here. So I'm super excited to get the engine back from TKM this morning. It's been there pretty much all of this year. Parts have been a nightmare to get. Not those guys' fault, but that's just the way it goes since all the COVID stuff. So I'm just gonna go over some of the engine details just from top to bottom and just hit the highlights of what this engine actually is and what we're gonna be running. So first of all, this is a Concepts block LSR tall deck. It is a solid aluminum block. We wanted to go aluminum for the weight. I think the block weighed in at like 136 before machining. So pretty lightweight versus like a Dart iron block or something like that. So that's gonna help us out because that's what we're banking on, as being the lightest weight stick shift car out of all the people that we run with anyway. So topping it off, we start with the Plasma Man Ls3 intake. This is their black intake with their 102mm throttle body with the integrated dual seal setup. I like this throttle body because it has a OEM style cam on it, which will make it feel really smooth hitting the throttle versus like a lever style like the Wilson High Boost that's on my wife's motor up there. So got all that. We've got a burst panel up there, obviously, because we're running alcohol. Always good to have a burst panel. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but just some extra security. This is a tall deck engine, so we've got tall deck spacers. I had the RHS machined off the front because I thought it looked kind of clashed with everything having the RHS road across there, so I had to machine that. We've got our Fuel Tech 720 injectors. The intake was slightly machined so they could go a little bit deeper in there and catch that top O-ring. Also upgraded to 12 ORB rails from the 8s that they're up there on the bench that come with the Plasma Man. Just wanted some extra fuel there in case we needed it, because I thought that the 8 might be a little bit pushing it for running 6s and a quarter like everybody is now. So to match up with all that, we've got black machined runners, then black valve covers. This is their billet valve covers for shaft style rockers. To my knowledge, they didn't have to be ground or anything on the inside, so that's pretty awesome that a billet valve cover fits over all that. As far as the cylinder heads, we have the Mast 295 LS3 black label heads. It's just a common off-the-shelf head. I mean, they're not that expensive, but they're like a step down from the Moses head. But Kevin's had several combos make way over 2,000 horsepower with these heads and not have any problem. So I'm running them on this and my wife's motor over there. We're not going to be having any water in this block, so it's a solid field block, so we ain't got to worry about doing any of that or messing with any of that. We've also got these heads have been top fuel hooped, copper gaskets, so we're not going to be leaking any cylinder pressure. Also, take one of these off. These are the shear fab header flanges I've told you about in my videos past, but I wanted to do something different. So I had TKM machine the heads for receiver groove for red O-rings, like all the rich boys run on the billet motors. So hopefully that'll do okay. If not, I guess we'll have to go to copper or something, but we can maybe get some copper rings to go in receiver grooves too. Just trying to make everything as nice as we can on this setup. Going down through the block, I'll just hit on all the rotating assembly. TKM spec the pistons. I really don't know what they are. I'll have to look at the build sheet. Some of this stuff I specified I wanted, just like the rods. I wanted the GRP aluminum rods. I specified that. The rest of the stuff I pretty much told Kevin to do whatever he thought needed. Just talk about it with me first and explain what he's doing. The crankshaft is a Callie's crankshaft. It's got a custom stroke on it. That's why it took us a while to get it. This motor comes in, even though it's a tall deck motor, it comes in at a 401 cubic inch. And for a tall deck, that's pretty small as far as the cubic inch goes, but the rod is long and the piston's gonna be super stable for the high RPM, and I thought that was what we wanted to go with. As far as, yeah, I mentioned the pistons, rods, and crank. I'm trying to keep up with what I'm talking about here. But going back to the cylinder heads, the rockers, we've got Tnd Shaft Rockers. They are steel versions, not the aluminum. Because the high RPM, we've got massive valve springs in this thing, 800 plus lift cam, black sheep version like they offer. And I didn't really trust an aluminum rocker to hold up for 9,000 plus RPM. So we agreed to go to steel, and I'll put a picture of those up here if I can think about it from the build and show you what all those look like. The timing stuff, we've got the Jessel belt drive, which is pretty standard in your higher horsepower engines. It just it's less vibration and stuff going on than what the chain is, so just a lot smoother. All this timing bracket stuff and the crank trigger, the timing pointer, the fuel pump bracket, everything come from Robert at AEI. He's the one who cuts our motor plates for us. This motor plate also was from him. It's got Du Hast in it. We've got a 19 gallon per minute fuel pump. This thing is massive, but we don't know if we're going to be doing an injector in the cold side or what, so I wanted to have plenty of fuel pump in case we wanted to blend fuels or do anything that required anything more than standard methanol. The bottom here, we've got a daily dry sump set up, which was freaking expensive, but for a race car, you really can't beat the lubrication capabilities of a dry sump system. When Jonathan switched to dry sump on the grub worm, he has nothing but good to say about that. He said everything has improved. The cleanliness of the oil, the oil pressure, obviously, just with how much horsepower these motors are making, the OEM style oil pump just cannot keep up with the oil delivery that it needs to keep these things together. So that's pretty much it. I think it's got 7/16 push rods in it. A few other details in there I probably left out, but that's pretty much it. The only thing we could have really done better on this combo was maybe do a billet block, which in hindsight I might have should have done that, but $14,000 for a block back whenever this build all started was way out of range for me. But now that we're here, now that we've spent what we've spent on this to get all this nice stuff, the billet block probably wouldn't have been but just a little bit longer wait, and it would have been a wash. So we'll see though. The cast blocks I know have a life expectancy. I'm not expecting this thing to run 10 years at 2,000 horsepower or anything. We have to be realistic here. So we just need it to make a couple thousand horsepower maybe to get us out there running with the competition. So I think it'll get us there. Shout out to TKM again. They've been awesome to work with. They actually use a My Shop app where I can track everything that's been done with the motor. I actually didn't even know they had the app because I'm not the type that really bugs people when they're doing work for me, because I knew they was waiting on parts. But Darren enlightened me on the app, and I got to looking on it, and I could see where things were started immediately almost when I dropped this block off. And throughout the year, things have been being done as they've been getting parts in and stuff. So it's really cool to see that and see all the different guys who are involved in working on it, and plus all the details there. All the tracks have been covered as far as those guys, to where if anything has been missed, it can be traced back to what was done and everything. So I think that's really cool that they show their customers that. So one more thing before the battery goes dead. It might go dead anyway, but we sent the turbine back to Bullseye. We had a 115, and I told Bill that the 115 is not going to be enough. We're going to have every ounce of horsepower we can out of this 104. So I sent the 115 back and swapped it in for a 150 AR. So we're going to get all we can out of that 104 NLX. And again, Bullseye out there, those guys are always great to deal with as well. So that's about it. We're going to get this thing in the car eventually. Probably going to do some sheet metal on the firewall and stuff first. But then we're going to get it in the car, finish fabbing up the turbo stuff, and hopefully get this thing ready by early springtime for wiring and ready to crank up. So follow along for the progress, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for everybody who watches and supports us, and I'll try to keep bringing the good content. So thanks guys, have a good weekend.